This is John Nugent.
I'm Ron Peters.
And I'm Sam Long.
Welcome to the After Class Podcast.
Because the best conversations happen
after class. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the After Class Podcast. We're glad to have you along. Just want to be the first to wish you all a Happy New Year, which it's by the time you listen to this, it's well into the new year, but it's our first recording in the new year.
Right.
So
yeah. Last couple oh my gosh, I can speak.
Starting great.
Off to a great start. The last couple we recorded back in December. But yeah, this is us recording in the new year.
Yeah.
And it's kind of exciting because this is our 9th season of the After Class Podcast. You know, we're wrapping up our 8th year, but we're in our 9th season now. And to me, that's just phenomenal. Like, we got to get one more season. We got to make it to 10. Even if we're talking about nothing, we got to get to 10. I want that round
the
number.
The season about nothing.
That's going to be the Seinfeld.
Patterned after Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine a Community had, I think it was 6 seasons in a movie. Like fans were pushing them to go that many for the show Community.
Oh, okay.
Community had a movie?
No, but that's what they're pushing. Instead of canceling it, they're pushing for that anyway.
Got you.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to do that with Firefly. You know, they got canceled after a season, and so they had to do a
disappointing.
movie to wrap
Community
it up.
is the one show that I caught like when it first started, and I watched every episode to the very end. Like almost everything I've watched was long after the fact, like 2 or 3 seasons in. But the premise of that one was so interesting to me. The theme of Community plus the college campus environment.
It definitely reminds me of Great Lakes sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it was. I when it first came out, I started watching it, but then I either lost interest or lost time, and so I had to go back at the end to finish the series out. But anyway, yeah,
I've never seen this. Where would I find it then?
It keeps switching services. Hulu, maybe last time I saw it.
All right, I'll have to track it down.
It's pretty funny. But, 9 seasons, I never would have expected it, but here we are.
You know, the fact that we are able to tolerate one another to make this happen, I think, is a testimony to the power of what we're doing here. So,
and we're forced to work together anyway, so it just seems like...
Get in there, guys. Keep it going. No, we like
it's
each
like
other.
therapy.
It helps that it's tied to our regular 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
Well, we don't have to make a special trip into
exactly.
Come and record.
We're already here. So,
but
that's not our big news.
No,
right.
It is not our big news. Do you want me to give the big news?
Sure.
Okay. Ron's pregnant.
Drum
Just
roll.
kidding. No,
I was so surprised by that, by the way.
So speaking of the workplace and so forth, we got a really cool event coming onto campus on Monday, January 26th at 7 o'clock. It's by a company called Eastgate Creative, and they've created a documentary called The Forge of Friendship. And it's talking about the relationship between C.S. Lewis and J.R.R.R. Tolkien. That may be too many R's. So what they're doing is they've created this documentary, and they're trying to, I guess, John, you're saying, get a buzz for it, maybe picked up by a bigger company like Netflix or something. So it's doing, I think it's a college campus tour where they're just going out to college campuses, and the director and producer are going to be there. They're going to show clips. And what's most exciting, I think, for us is our very own Charlie Starr is in the movie in some way. We don't know yet how, and he will also be there. And so we're hosting anyone who wants to come out to check it out. We'd love to have you. January 26th. Doors open at 6:30. It starts at 7. It's in 101 Woodard Hall Chapel. So come on out.
Yeah, be great to see you. And then afterwards, the three of us and Charlie are going to reflect on the documentary together and do a podcast episode. So
Charlie in here.
if you want to be up on the conversation and know what it is that we're reacting to, if you could make it to campus on, what'd you say, January 26th?
Monday, January 26th.
Yeah, we'd love to see you.
Did we share that on our Facebook page? I feel like we did. I feel like you did.
Yeah, I may have just plugged it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably there. If not, we might put it on there again just to remind you. And like I said, love to have you around.
We'll try to have stickers in hand.
Sure.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I have one T-shirt also.
Oh, we still have T-shirts left?
I have a T-shirt.
Yeah. If it happens to be the right size.
I was going to say, what
It's
size
probably a
is it?
medium or something. I don't know.
So nobody wears it.
You can get it for your child for Christmas next year.
I'm looking forward to this, though, because everybody knows what a huge Tolkien fan I am. And I love Lewis, too. I think Narnia is a wonderful place. But I can't wait to hear him talk about Tolkien. And so I'm going to try to do the nerd thing and get as close to these people as I can and, just bask in the glory of their presence and all that.
When you said I was going to try to do the nerd thing, I thought you said I'm going to dress as a wizard. I swear.
I am not doing that.
I'm dressing as Gandalf, and I'll be there.
You know what?
Robe.
I could, though.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, my beard is getting longer.
Guy.
Yeah, he shouldn't.
Don't do that. I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued by the idea.
Sorry, John. I'm sorry. I take full responsibility for where this might end up.
If I show up dressed as a wizard, then you can blame Sam for putting that idea in my head.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I do. All right. So
resuming our series
on truth, we spent a lot of time last episode sort of setting the stage for sort of the philosophical background to how we envision truth, which is not always a biblical version. What is going on over there?
I don't know.
I'm in a weird mood.
Too much coffee.
Yeah, without a doubt, too much coffee today. Sorry. Okay. Please continue, Sam.
Sure. And so what we want to do is go through biblical passages to see what they say about truth, which may be different than the philosophical version or sort of the understanding, the modernistic view of truth being an event that occurred. Right? Is that pretty much how we defined it last time?
Yeah, and that's what we found in Torah. There's not a lot of references to the words for truth, right? It just doesn't show up a lot. But truth is often in the context of, bearing false witness, like tell the truth, don't lie about what happened. The very generic use of the word truth is like this happened as opposed to you're pretending it did or misleading us to think something happened that didn't happen. And that function of truth language in the Bible continues throughout the whole Bible. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing uniquely Christian about that, right?
Yeah. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, is like I'm telling what happened.
Yeah.
An accurate representation of the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
So we want to go through the rest of Scripture and say, are there other angles on truth that Scripture has for us? And we're starting with the writing section.
Yeah, in the Psalms, which is, like we said, surprising, except that most of the rest of the narratives don't really talk about it in this way. And so I want to start with Psalm 86:11, which I think is kind of the foundational passage for understanding how especially the poetry utilizes the word truth. And it says this: "Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Give me an undivided heart to revere your name." And what I love about this is it brings in this idea of life as a journey, as a trip. Like there's a way, there's the two-way idea. We see this especially in Proverbs, but also with Jesus. This idea that there's a specific way, a specific mode of conduct that we should find ourselves in. And the psalmist says, teach it to me because I want to walk in that one. It's like there are all these, you come to a crossroads where maybe there's multiple ways to go, and they're asking God for the discernment to know which is the correct way, which in their minds would lead to flourishing, would lead to good things, and would avoid bad things.
Yeah, and I think what's significant is, I guess, truth as a way of life. Mm-hmm. As opposed to truth is an abstract set of concepts that we affirm. Truth is a path. It determines how we treat other people, how we interact with our possessions, our coworkers, our animals, how we approach cooking and cleaning and economics. Truth as way, I think, is a richer concept than a bunch of things that, do you agree with this?
Yeah, a bunch of factoids that you assent to.
Well, I like that as well because kind of just tying into what you said there, John, that, God loves his creation. He loves the dirt and the plants and the animals and us and the water and the mountains and the sky. And truth is to be able to interact with those things in a way that honors God's intention at creation. Like, God, you love your creation, and I want to love it the way you do. And I want my lifestyle to be a reflection of that love. And so, you can affirm certain things in your mind, but if those things aren't expressed in your lifestyle, are they really truth to you? And so I think it's important to connect that truth to a real life, tangible set of actions.
Yeah. And I suspect, and we're going to see this bear out in other passages, so it's a little premature to start, drawing big picture conclusions. But this may be the beginning of a Hebraic way of thinking of truth, would you say, Sam?
Yeah. And what it always goes to is this the Hebrew understanding that action is almost always involved, Like we like to separate them out. I don't know if that's the Greek influence or whatever, but you can believe in a truth or a fact. It may not actually change anything, right? But if, according to the Hebrew understanding, a truth that you are embracing is going to change how you live and what you do. And that is a very, like I said, that's a very Jewish, Hebraic, Old Testament understanding where action is involved. It's not just I'm going to ponder this for a while and ruminate on it. No, it leads to something.
Yeah. All right. So that's our first passage. What's our next one?
You're next.
Oh, I am next. Okay.
I'm going after you.
So we're not necessarily going in order, but the one I'm doing is after the one that Sam did, and Ron's going to take us back to an earlier psalm. But building on that, because we're talking about a Hebraic view, we want to talk about Psalm 119. And Psalm 119 is, what is it, the longest psalm?
It is.
In the Bible. It's, how many verses do you know off the top of your head?
172.
Yeah, so very long psalm. And it's a Torah psalm. You're going to double check?
My math is pretty, or is it 196? Crap. We'll get there.
You'll get there. But it's all really a psalm that reflects on the goodness of Torah.
Yeah.
And it's in that context where there are several passages that refer to truth. And the answer is?
176.
176. Close. All right. So the passage I'm going to look at is 119, 142. And I just realized that I have my notes on my paper, but I should probably go to the passage just in case I skip skip words.
Or maybe context. Lots of things are possible.
Yeah. So 119, verse 142. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is the truth. And so, that's self-contained enough. And so here, first of all, truth and law are equated with each other, right? And so, and for them, law is not abstract set of natural law principles. Mm-hmm. Law is Torah, right? It's the way of life we talked about in the previous psalm that God delivered to his people in Torah, which is the basis of Israel's witness, life together, mission in this world. And so God's Torah is truth. And so here we're getting into, we mentioned when we talked about Torah itself doesn't talk a lot about truth, especially abstractly, aside from the context, did this happen or did it not happen? Tell the truth, don't lie. But it doesn't reflect on itself as being truth. It's just like, here's how God has asked you to act. And so here is a, later Jewish audience composing a psalm that says, no, that way of life that we inherited on Mount Sinai, that we should be ordering our lives by, that is truth. And the law, parallel with truth, is parallel to righteousness. Mm-hmm. Right? So right living in relationship to God, in relationship to one another, in relationship to creation, that's what Torah is all about, and that's what truth is all about.
Yeah. If I can add 160 to reinforce what you're saying, the sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous ordinances endures forever. And so here, word and truth are equated, but word is not just God randomly talking. It's specifically talking about Torah, because in the context, then your ordinances, right? It's the parallelism of truth and ordinances are there, and so for them, it was more than just like general revelation as true. It was the specific revelation of God giving them the Torah. And what I love about Psalm 119 is so often we think about Psalms as praising God, he's so great and all this, and it's literally 176 verses. 76 verses saying Torah is awesome.
Yeah.
I whenever I do this in my OT2 class when we're talking about the Psalms, I ask, can you think of any songs that we sing congregationally that praise the Bible? And there are probably one or two that they can think of, maybe. Because we just don't do that. It's just weird for us to think about. And yet here's this entire psalm that says, this thing is so amazing. It's given to us by God and all the things we've been talking about. It is the way, and it tells us what we're supposed to do. And it's the guiding principle for all of life. And so for them, truth is not an abstract principle. It is this covenant that God has made with them, as you said, on Mount Sinai.
Yeah. Nicely tied together.
Thank you.
Nice.
I try.
Well, I think the one that I like ties into that really well also, because it's Psalm 43, verse 3. It says, "Oh, send out your light and your truth. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy hill and to your dwelling." But that first line there, "Oh, send out your light and your truth." As a New Testament scholar, it made me think immediately of John's gospel, the idea of light and truth being combined together, which is something John likes a lot, and it's an important part of his presentation. But it also makes me think about the things you guys were saying there, because light and truth are kind of held out there as loose synonyms. And light's really important because without light, you're just stumbling around in the darkness, and you're tripping over chairs and stubbing your toes and all that kind of stuff. But light helps you to see clearly. And that's what I think that the author is trying to say about God is that, I have your light and now I can see clearly. When we talk about things like natural revelation, it's not that you don't sometimes see truth in natural revelation, but sometimes if you look at the world, you can go, oh, I think the world works this way. I think of predators eating the sick and the weak in a herd, and people are like, see, look at those predators. They're keeping the herd healthy because they weed out the sick and the weak. We should organize our communities around that so that the strong can take advantage of the sick and the weak and do all that. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. That doesn't sound like a very good way to live. And God steps in and says, no, I'm going to show you something better. And Torah, I think, helps us to understand that don't take everything you see in the world as a representation of God's ultimate good. But when God shines light, it allows us to see things more clearly, and sometimes it's going to challenge the quote-unquote truths that we might draw from the natural world. And so this idea of truth being connected to light and connected to God's teaching of how he wants us to live as people who honor him, I just think it's really beautiful. And I think that for John just understood that so well. He just takes that same thing up and runs with it as he is trying to then communicate what Jesus has, come and taught us.
Yeah. Do you mind if I read the rest of that verse? Because there's another dimension here.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you do mind?
It's a different verse.
Is it the next verse?
No, it's actually chapter 45, verse 4.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
There's a little return and erase issue. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you read that?
Okay. In your majesty, ride on victoriously for the cause of truth and to defend the right. Let your right hand teach you dread deeds.
Okay. And, it's interesting. This one kind of parallels Psalm 43 because the context in both of them are the psalmist is in trouble. There are antagonists in their life that are oppressing them, that are keeping them down, and God is their defender, right? And so for his truth to prevail, it means that God's righteous ones are vindicated, that the oppressors are brought low. And so for this, I think, version of truth, it's God clarifying by whom he intervenes to save, which people are on the right side of history, right? Which people are on God's side. And so God intervenes to save those who are part of his plan for moving world history and salvation history forward. And so he intervenes to save those who are on the right path. And who he brings low is a divine statement of, they're not part of the future God is bringing. And so there's something about truth here that especially comes out in these penitential psalms or these, what's the other kind of psalm that's kind of more negative? Lament songs, okay. Thank you. Yeah, these lament songs to cry out for God for deliverance, where truth language is introduced, it's always to accredit the one who is on God's side of where history is going. And so there's something about truth that it's not necessarily a timeless principle in the sky that all right actions on the ground have to conform to. It is where is God at in this story, in this history, in the life of this people, and where is he taking the future? And who he lifts up and who he brings down is a way of discerning his truth. And so if the righteous is innocent, they don't deserve to be brought down by this oppressor, their innocence will be seen to be truth because God intervenes to save them. And that's how they know that their way of life is true to God's intentions for humankind.
Yeah, I think to reinforce what you're saying, the context of 45 really brings that out. It's actually a psalm probably to a king, an earthly king. And you talk about God vindicating people. Well, how does that happen? Well, typically through someone here on earth, as opposed to like God dropping fire out of heaven on someone's face, right? and so that's what 45:4 says is, in your majesty, King, ride on victorious for the cause of truth and defend these people. And so 43 is crying out to God, and 45 is like, well, here is an answer. Ideally, we have a king, a leader who does that, who maintains justice according to God's truth. And so it's kind of a cool that even though it was accidental that it put them together, I see there's a lot of connections there.
Yep. So one is more individual, and the other is kind of making it corporate, but they're both talking about the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
One more point before we move on, if that's okay. Going back to 40, or not, no one stopped me. So 43 is talking about this way, send your light, your truth, let them lead me. And then the question is, well, where is it supposed to lead to? And the psalmist says, your holy hill, your dwelling. So it's talking about Jerusalem. It brings in temple ideas. And so it's to God's presence, to the place in which people can live out Torah and sacrifices and all the things of the Old Testament. And so it's not just a random trip somewhere. It's there's a destination. And the destination, I think, they would probably say, is back into God's presence, God's bosom, if you will. And that because if the truth leads you somewhere else, then it's not truth. Or if the way goes somewhere else, then it's not in God's truth.
Well, it makes me think about, that you're describing them going to the place where you can encounter God. You encounter him at the temple. But what's that encounter going to produce? We're circling back to some of the things we've already said here. But it's not just to have an encounter with God so you can walk away feeling good. It's like, oh, that was so great, It should be a transformative experience to where my encounter with God has taught me something. And that is, this is how my life should look. And so it's, like I said, it's not just this sort of momentary high that you experience because you encountered God, but it is a transformative experience with God that from this point on, my life is going to look different in a way that my neighbors and my family and my coworkers are going to see. And some will like it and some won't.
That's right. Yeah.
That's enough from the Psalms, right?
There's a few others, but a lot of them are going to say the same sort of thing, so we don't have to belabor the point. So we'll jump to Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 17. There are a lot of little tidbits and snippets about different topics in the Proverbs, and here truth comes out. So it says this: whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness speaks deceitfully. And this is going back to that previous understanding of truth, which is telling what happened and telling it the right way. And there is a huge high priority in Torah and in the Old Testament about speaking rightly and speaking what is factually true. Because their society is built on that. If you have people who are lying to, get ahead and take advantage of one another, their society breaks down. I think of Naboth and his vineyard, where the king wanted his vineyard, and so he wouldn't get its normal way, so he set up people to lie and give false testimony against him. It's one of the commandments. And so these ideas over and over, where truth is so important in the sense of, if we speak falsely to our neighbor, what are we doing? And how can we be a covenant community if that's part of our DNA? And so over and over, Torah tries to get rid of that.
And I think this is huge, especially in our day. I think some of the biggest frustration that we have on the ground, and especially in America right now, like depending on when you hear this episode, we're right on the heels of the United States invaded Venezuela and took away their president and his wife, right? And then we also had a shooting, right, in Minnesota, right? And there is a battle of spinning and narratives, like, why did America go into Venezuela that way? Is it for the oil, right? Is it for to disrupt the drug trade? Is it this larger Monroe Doctrine, right, of trying to keep the Eastern powers out of the Western world and just kind of carve out safe space for America to do its trade, right, and stuff like that? And so and like the administration comes out and says one thing, right? And then right away, depending on what news network you're part of and what your agenda is, you have, 5 different theories of what's really going on or what really happened. And it really does matter. Yeah. I mean, whether this was legal, it matters, or whether we should get behind it, or whether we should oppose it. What really happened really matters. You need true witnesses. And the same thing in Minnesota. Like, was this person shot because the driver was trying to run them over? Or was this law enforcement being impulsive and drawing the gun way prematurely, right? When he could have just stepped out of the way, right? Like, what really happened really matters. And we need true witnesses and true testimony to have a sense of how to even process what's going on. And so I think the Proverbs is really great about this, and the Torah too. Yeah. Like, do not bear false witness. It's part of the Big Ten, because how we go forward, how we process, how we respond is contingent upon having a realistic, accurate estimate of what happened. And that's where there's so much division in this world, because we cannot agree on what happened because sides are too committed to frame it in one direction or another.
Exactly.
Whether to defend everything Trump did or to stand against everything Trump does. Yeah. Right? And it's so predictable whenever his administration does something that you're going to have the all good camp and the all bad camp. And it's frustrating.
And in addition, we have, like, even today when we have video of things that happen, we still can't agree.
Right.
Right? Like, because not all the facts necessarily are there and all the rest, but even like before is like all the testimony of a witness is based on someone saying something. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if I can trust them, their character or whatever. But now we have like clear video evidence, and yet it's still not enough to make any clear assumptions or clear determinations. And so it's like you said, it's frustrating, especially when you have all these voices trying to, and I don't know that they're all intentionally distorting truth, but they're speaking as you hate their truth, which may or may not be what actually happened. And yeah, like you said, it's frustrating and it's disappointing.
And even when you have video footage, it's from an angle. Right, where there are bodies obstructing, where the audio is not clear, and it's like a society, for a society to be healthy and work toward a common good, there has to be a baseline commitment to saying what really happened. And so fake news is a problem, and spins are an enemy to social unity, and it's why our society continues to be divided. Philosophically, politically, practically, it's because we are entertaining different versions of truth, different versions of what happened in any given event that happens that gets the national public awareness.
Well, I think that it leans into this idea of your truth versus my truth, because we're not really talking about truth. What we're talking about is, how can I use this event to advance my agenda? And that's what you're describing there. And that's what's really frustrating. It's like, I just want to know what happened. Help me understand what happened here. And it's probably not what's being represented on either side. And so when people just look at it and say, I've got to use this event so that I can advance my agenda, they don't care about what really happened. All they care about is perception. And some people are good with that. They're happy living in that world. But I don't think that's the world that God wants us to embrace. And I don't think it's, what that proverb wants us to embrace. Why is it that any accusation has to be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses? It's because we want to make sure we're actually seeing it the way it happened. And if those witnesses can't agree, then we're probably not getting the story that we need to make a good decision. But for so many people, it's not about making a good decision. It's just, I've got an agenda. I need an event that helps me to advance it. And that's what they grab onto. And that's where I would encourage anybody listening to the podcast to say, I understand that impulse, but are we going to, make that impulse, are we going to push back against it and say, God has called us to something different and something better? And it might be difficult, but I think it more aligns, again, with the Proverbs 12:17 idea. And again, the Torah idea.
Yeah, and I think it's just so important for Christians. Like, we're not going to, and Christians are never going to like weigh in and settle the truth of what really happened in worldwide politics, right? Because I mean, how much is what really happened that can't be said out loud, because there's international ramifications involved with right allies and opponents on a global scale that are part of it that just can't be talked about, right? And so when we live in a world where truth is clearly being twisted all the time, and by truth, the generic meaning of what really happened is being twisted all the time to serve different agendas, God's people need to stand out for telling the truth. Like, as it depends on us in our jobs, in our households, in our communities of faith, our testimony that we render to one another and how we speak about what happens will be committed to the truth, to what really happened. And the agenda that sets the context for how we speak truthfully is the agenda of God's word, right? His truth, the Torah, the kingdom revelation of Jesus. Like, we have an agenda that our bearing faithful testimony is our interpreting reality, A, being honest about what really happened, and B, being evaluated over against the story of salvation history and what God is doing in world history and how we fit into that. And so there has to be a place on earth in the world of spin zones and political machinations that are constantly twisting the truth to serve different agendas. There's got to be a people in the world that are dedicated to saying what really happened. And when we screwed up, we say what really happened as a form of confession of our sin, and we repent of it.
Yeah, good point.
Like, we recognize that we're not always on the right side of truth. We don't always do the right thing. Our people don't always do the right thing, and we confess. And so if Christians can't be committed to this, we won't be a positive witness for God and his kingdom.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And it should challenge Christians to question whether or not they can maintain that commitment in certain like jobs or responsibilities or whatever. It's like, that's what I want to be. I know so many Christians say, yep, that's who I want to be. But if all of a sudden you're in a job where it's like, oh, but I have to be a spin doctor. Oh, I can't speak the truth. It's like, now you got two kingdoms in tension, and you're going to find out where your allegiances really are. And I'm not trying to heap condemnation on anybody. I'm trying to inspire people to say, you know what? I might have to say no at times to certain opportunities, because as good as that may sound, I just want to represent God. And I know that in this situation, I'm going to have to do things that don't represent the kingdom well. And that's a hard thing. I'm not trying to heap condemnation on people, but I think it's an important thing to wrestle with.
Yeah. And the worst thing we can do is take those worldly agendas, right, and accounts of truth and falsehood, and those frameworks of being on this side politically is the right side of world history, this side's the wrong side. Everything needs to be interpreted as to spill one way or another, to allow those categories and those agendas to enter into the church, so that what a pastor says, or what happens among the elders, or what's going on in the service ministries of the church is being interpreted and roped into those two agendas. Like, when that happens, we've lost. We've got to be the city on a hill, the light that's not hidden, because we remain committed to the truth. And our truth is that this lines up with God's kingdom purposes and his will for how we get there. And we're just willing to admit when we screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we?
Okay.
We have we have one more wisdom literature passage.
Okay, yeah.
I would recommend reading 9 through 12 if someone was going to read that.
I'm still in Psalms. So
that sounds right.
I got caught up in that conversation, and I wasn't looking ahead.
It's kind of a mini hot take.
No, it's a good hot take, though. So anyway, which one is that? Ecclesiastes 12.
12.
John and I are both flipping. This is kind of like the
Get
sword
ready
drill.
for the next passage. I'm going to a different one.
Oh, okay.
We're going to end it.
I'm going to be ready when it's my turn.
We're going to be finished on this one.
Yeah. Nope. I'm thinking about sword drills. I know there are probably one or two people out there who participated in sword drills in Sunday school.
I still do it in my classes.
Do you really? That's fantastic.
I tell them, I read scripture when they get this to hit the Bible when they get there. And there's a lot of banging around. There's not for anything other than pride to say I got there first, but
Wonderful.
I love it. Ecclesiastes 12:10.
9 to 11.
9 through 12, I think would be appropriate.
9 through 12?
That's
okay.
my thought, but
That's fine. I'm good with that. Besides being wise, the teacher also sought. Oh my gosh!
coffee.
You know what?
Coffee
I
brain.
should just quit here. Besides being wise, the teacher also taught the people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs. The teacher sought to find pleasing words, and he wrote words of truth plainly. The sayings of the wise are like goads, and like nails firmly fixed are collected sayings that are given by one shepherd. Of anything beyond these, my child, beware. Of making many books, there is no end, and much study is weariness to the flesh. How many college students have quoted that one?
Plenty.
All of them.
Is there anybody who hasn't said that? Go ahead.
I was saying, the reason I wanted to read a little bit more, because the one we focus on is verse 10. It says, the teacher sought to find pleasing words. He wrote words of truth plainly. But there's a lot going on in this book where Kohelet, the author, is intending to bring together his experience and his thoughts to pass it along to maybe make life better or worse, depending on how I view it, for people who would come after him. And so he's attempting to look around and bring together what's right, what's true, and so forth. And so he did that. He tried to find he sought to find pleasing words, and he wrote words of truth plainly. And I don't know if there's a contrast there. He sought to find pleasing words. However, he wrote words of truth plainly, because if you read Ecclesiastes, they're not pleasant words. There's a lot of
Agree, yeah.
Meaningless,
right.
Vanity of vanity.
Yes. And so I like that. Then what's next is this idea of the way. And that's why I wanted to include the sayings of the wise are like goads. Ron, you're a farmer. What's a goad?
I mean, it's just a sharp stick that you poke into
it's
the
a pokey
back.
stick. That's
yeah,
right.
you poke in the back end of an animal that won't move.
It's an ancient version of a cattle prod.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've worked around enough farm animals to know that they are not cooperative.
Yeah, especially the cats.
I was thinking about the cows that I've worked with that will always want to go the opposite direction.
I know.
And so,
That's why he said it.
and yeah, the idea of a goad is you got to do something to get this thing to move in the right direction. But I think that's why the image is so great, is that sometimes we can be like a cow or whatever, and we don't want to go in the direction that really God desires for us. And his desire is a good desire, but sometimes we need something to poke us in the butt to get us to go the right direction. And so, Kohelet is trying to provide that for people.
Yeah, and so it's like Psalms is like the person desires to find the right way. Ecclesiastes is you need a little help because you're stubborn and stupid. But the point is still to get you on the correct path, on the correct way that leads to God. And so I love how it kind of brings a different perspective of finding the way, because I wish we all were like, I just want to find God's way and God's path. And we may say that, but in reality, we're not like that because we're selfish and stupid. And so Ecclesiastes for me is a little bit more of a hits me in my wheelhouse. I suppose the psalmist,
boots on the ground.
Psalmist is nice and I appreciate it, but I don't always feel that way.
Yeah, I think this passage is an important thing to round out the Bible's account of truth, because I think the account of truth represented in this verse is a perspective that's, I think, unique to the wisdom literature, right? Where wisdom literature in general is kind of rational reflection on human experience in God's creation, right? It's the closest thing to natural law, I think, that we have in the Bible. Like that, if you just pay attention to the movement of the ants and the alignment of the geese and cause and effect actions and consequences of people just living their life in the world, you learn which way of life does not lead to human thriving and what ways of life do lead to human thriving, right? And what's unique about it is the absence of Torah. There's not a lot of Torah in Ecclesiastes. When you reflect on all the teacher's words, he's not going to be pointing you back to, Mount Sinai and the law God delivered. And you're also not going to hear much of like a prophetic word from the Lord, like you would get from the prophets we're going to go to in our next section. You don't have these words that the Lord has revealed through a dream or a vision to a prophet. these words of truth are generated by humans thinking rationally about their experience in creation, right? And these are truth, right? And they're complex truths because reality is super complex. And the Koheleth was committed to making the complex lessons we learn from living in this world available in a very simple way to understand. And this version of truth in many ways lines up to modern secular versions of truth. Like what people's truth is, often they're saying is, from my experience, this is what I believe. And wisdom literature is a little more disciplined than that.
Yep.
Like the wise men of Israel who are writing the wisdom literature we have in the Bible, they are searching wisdom far,
right,
from region to region, from nation to nation, and they're not just focusing on the present and what sounds hot or attractive or what seems right today. For them, the truth is what has seemed right for generations and will continue to seem right going forward. Their collection of experience is much bigger when an individual talks about their truth.
Yeah, that's a huge and important point because, like you said, they're actively seeking out experiences and these sorts of things from other cultures, other people, as opposed to, in my opinion, as a 18-year-old in upper middle class suburbia. Like,
right.
What are you talking about here? Like, the world is so much bigger than that. And so, yes, I'm not denying you had that experience, but there's a lot more out there in this world. And so I think you're right that, yes, they're doing it, but in a way that's better, right? They're basing their, quote, truth on their experiences, but they've had a lot of experiences, and they've gone through a lot of things to try to get to that place instead of just staying in their little silo and their little, this is where everything comes down to. And so I think that's a really important point you bring out. I would also say that we didn't read it, but the editor of Ecclesiastes brings it all back home, right? They say, sure, Koheleth, this guy, he went out, he did some things, he tried a lot of things. He's got some good words to say, and those words will probably start you on the right direction. However, he says, there's more to it than that. You want to read it? You want me to read it?
Yeah, verse 13.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll read it.
Oh, great.
The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for that is the whole duty of everyone. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, he brings it back around. I assume commandments have to do with Torah on some level. It depends on when you date the writing of this part of it. But I think in their minds of the readers, kind of moving forward, he's talking about Torah. And so you've heard it all. You heard what he's had to say, and there's some good things in there. But in the end, what matters, right? What matters most, going back to the Psalms, finding truth and finding the way. And you do that by fearing God and by keeping his commandments. And that's where you find purpose in this life.
Yeah, and that's a really critical way to end the book, right?
Yeah.
Because we've just defined truth, according to the wisdom literature, and Ecclesiastes in particular, as being just kind of human reflection on experience. And there's an affirmation of that in this book. Like, wow, this teacher found ways to express the truths we get from that plainly. But read the book. It led him to despair.
Right.
It all became meaningless. Like the lessons learned fall back on themselves, and the principles that you would expect to bear positive fruit don't bear positive fruit, and the things you expect would bear negative fruit, like someone living an evil, gritty lifestyle, should bear negative fruit. But no, those people die with a smile on their face and leave lots of resources to their children. Like, the lessons of brute reflection on creation and the way things go lead to despair, because of sinfulness in the world, they don't go the way they should go. And so I love the way he ends the book. The end of the matter of this is this: we need revelation from God. We need words from him, because down here it all gets so messy and sloppy that it's hard to tell right from wrong, good from evil. We need a divine word to break in and set the story straight. And I think that ties back to our hot take. That's what we need today in a world of competing international relations and local riots and disturbance and deaths. We need God to speak a word to give us guidance in times like this, because to reflect on what goes on and to try to find your peace and stability in the sloppiness of American history will lead you to despair, and we need God to set things right.
Yeah, amen.
Is that it? We're out of time?
Can be.
We're out of time.
It's a good place to end.
I believe.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the After Class podcast. After Class because
The best conversations happen
after class.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the After Class podcast. ACP is hosted by Sam Long, John Nugent, and Ron Peters. Social media pictures and descriptions are provided by Darren Harris. Audio mixing and editing is done by Drew Nyquist. If you've enjoyed this episode of ACP, you might also enjoy GLCC's Master of Arts in Practical Theology degree. In this 36-hour program, you will receive first-rate biblical and theological instruction from John, Ron, Sam, and several of their colleagues at Great Lakes Christian College. To learn more about this program, visit glcc.edu. Get practical and go deep at GLCC.